Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it's June 8th of 2021, and it's 5:08 a.m. in the morning. Uh, I just started over because I started making this, I started the video, and then I said, I'm using ManyCam, and I said, uh, I noticed that it was set at 1080p at 60 frames per second, or it was set at 30 frames a second. And I kicked it up to 60 frames a second before I started this video. And I said, I have everything set up on my two computers. The recording, for the YouTube and everything is working on both the systems. Everything's fine, unless I messed it up with the changing that from 30 frames a second to 60. And then I said, oh, to hell with it. I'm just going to go ahead and stop, watch the video, and start over again. So that's what I've done. So I'm so lazy. I actually am not lazy. I've worked all my life, never without a job. And for many years I had two jobs, But I don't do much now. Well, I don't do anything now. I mean, I can barely do anything now. I'm sitting here with my legs that you don't want to see, and my feet. And they're in bad shape. My own fault. I'm going to say this again. I've never been a fan of, vegetarianism. My oldest daughter, she's 50 something, and her husband are both, vegans. And, of course I love my daughter. I love all my kids. And my youngest is 42 or 44. Doesn't sound like I can't remember their date of birth. I can remember my mother's date of birth, and I can remember my ex-wife's date of birth, and I can remember my own date of birth, and I can't remember anybody else's date of birth. I have no idea what my ex-wife's phone number. I have it written down. I have it on my cell phone. I take my cell phone, of course, everywhere. If I go to the trash container or go to the office to get the mail or something, I take my cell phone. Because if I collapse or something happens and somebody calls EMS, or they're going to ask, I can give them my name and date of birth. I don't even know my own phone number. So, anyway, let me go back to where I was at. Let me start over here. This is the Beeline computer that I bought, mini computer, and it's working fine, working great. Has a little fan in there. It gets a little bit warm when I'm playing Civilization. Well, it gets kind of hot when I'm playing Civilization 6. It runs a little bit on something else, and I forget what that is. But not bad at all. That's not a problem. I talked about what the problem was with this thing, and I corrected the problem using a sound blaster. Is this? Yeah, there it is. You can see it. I do like this view. I just moved that camera from up, it was up there, and I moved it over here in the corner next to the wall. I'm that close to the wall. And I actually do like that view better. Not for me. There's no view of me that I like. And never did, Um, but I do like it because you can see, here's the microphone. I'm using the Elgato microphone. You can see it here with this where the camera is set now. You can see it. Um, see a little bit of the keyboard here. Here, of course, I'm not going to be using that camera in that position if I'm making a video over here on the Dell PC, which you can see, which is running Ubuntu. But you can see the Blue Yeti X microphone that's right there. That's for this setup. And like I mentioned, I think I have both of them. I've been the last few days messing with things, and I think I have them on this setup and this setup. I think I've got them correct. I'm pretty sure it's going to be correct on this unless Windows installs some update unless I do a little something and plug a little tiny something into the thing that changes something. But right now, I think the audio is in sync. It looks okay. Now I guess that curtain over there, no, that's that curtain back there. Okay, there's a window there, and the curtain I have drawn back, but the shades are whatever. I guess it might be in the afternoon because that's the west. It could be when the sun is going down. There might be, unless I do the curtain thing. Might be too much light, I don't know. So everything appears to be working. I'm almost tempted, but I'm not going to do it, to make a video here, then splice them together and have one video. But no, I'm going to stick with this. Like I said, this is ManyCam. I've paid for several licenses, taking advantage of specials, and I've got lifetime, whatever. And ManyCam is, it's not OBS. People are going to use OBS. By the way, I do use OBS over here. But here, ManyCam works well for me, and I'm very happy with it. Over the years, I've purchased so much hardware and software. It's just unbelievable. The number of modems that I purchased, the number of printers, the number of computers. One time I applied for a job. I won't go into the details on that. When Radio Shack opened up a Radio Shack computer store. They opened up one in I was living in Kansas City, Missouri, and it was in North Kansas City, or I forget, wasn't in South Kansas City, where I lived in Belton, I think, at that time. They opened up a computer store, and I thought that was pretty neat, but it wasn't really close to me. Then I don't know how long it was, a year, 2 years or something, and they opened up a brand new computer store, computer store in Overland Park, Kansas, which sounds like it, but it's actually. I lived in South Kansas City. I lived in Belton, I think. Anyway, very close to get to. So I went over. I am telling you the story, aren't I? I went over to. Why? Oh, I know. So I went over to apply. They said I went in and talked to the guy there, and he said, I ended up telling him, my first computer was a Radio Shack Model 1 with 4K of, memory, and then I got, a Tandy 2000. I ended up actually with two Tandy 2000s. And then I had, of course, the Model 100. That was, I think, at the time I could remember, that was their, like a laptop, But I could probably, here, wait a minute, we can do this, can't we? Well, okay, let's go ahead and do this. Oh. Let me try computers here first. Somebody probably shows. Okay, maybe, well, let's go with the Wikipedia here. Maybe it will show. Okay, here it is, the Radio Shack Model 1. That's my first computer. And came out and it says 1977, and I bought it as soon as it was available. In fact, it only had 4K of memory, and because they didn't add it, the operating system was 4K of memory, and I wrote in BASIC a BBS program on it and started, and then it was 1982 that I went online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with my BBS. But now that looks more like, why does this look, the monitor is, this is the, this is the way the thing looked. Anyway. Okay, let's see if they show any of their other. I guess not. Well, what the hell with it. Anyway, I told the guy, I owned the Model 100, and I went through them all. And he said, my God, he says, you definitely got the job. I want you working here. I need you. And it wasn't just computer stuff I bought from Radio Shack, although that was a Radio Shack computer store, but I think they had a few other things, if I remember correctly. And he said the general manager he wants to interview everybody, And so it was like a week or something. It was kind of like, and I knew. So anyway, I have to go, go out and talk to the general manager, and he wanted me for be manager of a regular Radio Shack store. I told him no, blah 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 blah. And he said, "There's no way. I know that job sucks, and I'm not interested. And if you're not going to put me to work at the computer store, then." And he said, "What if we had a Radio Shack store in Belton?" That's where I lived. Small town. And I said, at Cedar Tree Square, they're somebody's opening up a business there, and I saw them put up a giant pole, the kind you have for your. I said, "Is that going to?" He says, "Yes." And he said, "You can have that. You'll be manager of that store, when it opens up." And I said, "Okay." And so then he sent me to Bannister Mall, just opening shopping a mall, a big mall. They said that'd be the last. Well, it turned out, sort of it was, in a way. They said that'll be, I mean, they didn't say, but the news media and everything covered the opening of the Bannister Mall shopping center. Said it would be the last of the big shopping centers because you could only have so many of them or something. I think there might have been a few others opened, but now shopping centers are dying, are dead. And of course, I didn't get that store, but I covered that before, so I'm not going to go into how I didn't get the store, except that there was, well, let me make it quick. There was a guy who was already a Radio Shack monitor who lived in Belton, but he was working the store in Raytown, there again, very close. And so you know, I told the general manager when I found out, and everything. He said, "Well, I haven't decided yet." And I said, "Well," he said, "but let me send you to the Grandview store," which was a little place, but a Radio Shack store that had been around for a long time. And the way the Radio Shack thing worked is, you made money. Like if you were the manager, you got a small pay, except you made money if the store made money. And almost none of the Radio Shack stores made it. Like the mall that I was manager trainee at or whatever, that store would never make money because you had to pay mall rates for the store, and because they did everything else to fuck you. I mean, it was just, but the store he sent me over to, he says, you can be manager there. And he says, that store makes money for the manager, makes money for the little, because it had been there forever. It was kind of a hole in the wall. And I went there, and yeah, I could make money. He sent me there as just to wait until that one was going to be available, which it was going to be available. And but my deal was with him, I said, I know that there is this manager who is manager of the store in Raytown. He lives in Belton. He's a manager already. He certainly is entitled to it, but we had a deal, and if you give it to him, that's fine. That's probably what you should do. But if you give it to him, I'm quitting. That's the deal. So, okay, I got to go ahead and tell you this. So he sends me there, and then I get a call from the manager at the mall where I had worked as manager trainee, and he said, Jim, they just sent so-and-so, they just sent so-and-so. He didn't say so-and-so. I mean, I can't remember the name. Let's say Bob. They just sent Bob to the Belton store to open it up. And I said, oh, okay, thank you. And so then I called the general manager. I said, I understand that you've sent, Bob to open up the Belton store. And he says, oh, yes, I have. And I said, okay, well, I'll be quitting. I'll stick around here for a couple of days until you can get somebody. And he said, I've already got somebody on the way. And I said, well, when he gets here, I'll just quit. And I'll walk out the door as soon as he gets here. So the guy showed up, a black guy, young black guy. He came in, of course, at that store. The guy who was the manager of it, he'd been with Radio Shack forever, and he traveled, it looked like he was just like a, can you say a gypsy or I have to say traveler, I don't know, anyway. He can move around, and he could get, and he knew all the tricks in and out, what to do, how to do things. But I opened the store up, and when he showed up, then he would just leave and go visit some other Radio Shack stores or do something, just do something. And he was gone. That was fine with me. I didn't care. And I closed up the store. I didn't care. Anyway, this young black guy shows up. He says, and I said, yeah. I said, general manager said he was sending you over. I didn't tell him any, details about anything. And I said, the manager, I can't remember his name, he'll be here in a little bit. And so him and I visited a little bit, and then the manager showed up, and they went in the back room, and I could hear the guy said, when in the hell what do you mean? Jim Howard opens the store and closes the store? When do you work? What do you do? It was going like that. And then a little bit later, the guy came out and he said, nice meeting you, Jim. And he quit. He left. So that was Radio Shack. But anyway, over the years, I bought scanners, well, computer scanners, but I bought radio scanners, when they came out with their first ham radio, I bought one. I just bought everything from Radio Shack. That's why that guy, anyway. Let us entertain you. Let's see what's going on in the world here. Senate report reveals new details about the January 6th Capitol attack. Besides previously unknown details about the stunning security failures, the bipartisan report also has several glaring omissions, including Trump's role in the riots. Department of Justice argues it should substitute Trump in the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit. Senator Johnson twists Martin Luther King Jr.'s words to deny systematic racism in the U.S. How can anybody deny racism in the United States? Man, I've dealt with it. I worked at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, security officer, and 5.5 years. And the director of security was extremely racist. And I fought against, I fired when I was a supervisor, I fired one of the security officers for making a racist statement. That sounds like I ended up being the being in charge of all 3 shifts instead of 1 shift for several months on a couple occasions because the lieutenant had a heart attack. And first he had a heart attack, and then later he had the bypass surgery done. And I talked to all of the security officers together as a group and told them what was not going to be allowed, and the racism that was going on the second shift, especially. It was the things that they did were just, there was inexcusable. I talked to them all and said, that's over with, not happening. And then I talked to each one of the individuals on the second shift, security officers, and told them, no, And the supervisor, I called him in to the office and sat him down and, told him this is the way it's going to, this is the way it's going to be. You've had your warning. And he said, also what they were doing on the second shift was every time a black officer was hired in for that shift, we didn't go out and, but if a black man got hired for the shift, right away they would be telling the director of security, well, he's no good. We showed him how to check the doors and to make sure that to lock up the doors that need to be locked up and to unlock the ones that need to be, and we go back and we check, and he did them all wrong and blah 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 blah. And I found out that they were going around Chuck mainly, because the supervisor was like, he was an instigator. The supervisor on the second shift of security, he'd been a firefighter, retired from the Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department, And the fire department, that's back when, may have changed, I don't know if it's changed or not. I think it did change. That's when I think you worked for like 3 days straight. But there were beds there, in the kitchen and everything else, of course. And you worked 3 days straight, and then you got off X number of days. But because of that, and just because of the history of the department, if you were black, if you got hired in, it took a while for blacks to get, or you were female, or Hispanic, or whatever. No, it didn't matter. And especially this guy, of course, well, I think he was probably like average. Cleo was his name. They spent all their time stirring up crap on the fire department, not just at that fire station, but all of them. It was just, you see on the news about some workplace, and there's nooses hung up. A black person that gets hired in, there's nooses hung up, or there's, whatever. That was just that's the thing. And so this guy he hired in at the hospital, and eventually, when I went from second shift supervisor to the day shift, then he unleashed his thing that he'd been doing. And a part of it, I think, was they were, one, having, trying to humiliate and degrade and all that kind of stuff. But also it was like pushing the view away from them, Okay, I'm not going to get in trouble because I'll make sure that stuff are, So anyway, I called him into the office. The lieutenant had an office and a desk, and then there was the secretary was there. The director of security, his office was down around the hall. He had his office just to himself. And then there was an office, which we didn't sit there with chairs, but there was an office for the security officers, where we got the radios and forms and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I called Cleo in and said, that I said, it's not going to be, this stuff's not going to be, well, I talked to him the day before. That's because the director of security was going to be gone for several weeks. So I was actually going to be like acting director of security, whatever. Wait a minute, let me do that. So anyway, I told Cleo, I said, okay, this isn't going to be allowed. And he says, well, if they had, I can't go through all of, you would not, Well, the thing that set me off when I found out about that was, well, I was in charge of, when I was the day shift supervisor, I was in charge of the security officers and 7 parking lot attendants. And the second shift, they had 2 or 3 parking lot attendants. They also all got fired. I mean, anybody that was black got fired by the second shift. And I had heard that when they told the director of security, oh, this, this parking lot attendant, oh, he was black, he's no good, this, such and such. And so the director of security said, okay, well, when he comes in, take his keys, blah, blah, and he's, tell him to go on home, he's fired. And it was Cleo and Chuck. Seemed like they were the real, as they told him, okay, you're fired. Which really they shouldn't actually have done, but the director of security at that point had told them that yeah, that's why. Because I should have been handling that. Because they weren't competent to do it, and the guy who was, you know. But so anyway, I'm going to use the word, you know. So as the guy is leaving the hospital and going over to the parking garage to get his car, they are yelling at him, "Goodbye, little nigger, goodbye, little nigger," to him as he left. When I heard that, and then I wasn't in any at that point position to do, but here now I was. So anyway, so and Cleo says to me, "Oh, okay." I talked to Cleo the day before because the director of security was going to be gone for a couple months. He had a little bit of money, more than a little bit of money, because he was also retired officer from the military, and he had 100% disability and whatever, and so he had that income was totally tax-free, and retirement. And his wife, she was a nice lady. She had a job, made more than he did as director of security. Anyway, I told, I said, okay, you're going to be gone here a little bit, and the lieutenant's going to be, gone for 3 months or whatever. So I said before, when I filled in, temporarily for a while, I said, but now I'm going to go ahead and I forget how I put it, do the job and do it right and do what needs to be done. Do I have your backing? And he said yes. And so I said, well, okay. And I said, I'm going to have Cleo come back. And then Cleo came in, and then I laid it out to Cleo. I said, you're not going to be able to use this word, this word, this word, this word. You're not going to be able to do things like unplug the heater on the patrol car so that a parking lot attendant, can't sit in it when it's, 20 below zero, and, and I just went through a whole list of things, and I said, it's all, and I laid it out to him, and then, so the next day, the director of security is gone, and Cleo comes in on the second shift, and he comes to the office and says, Jim, I want to talk to you, and I don't like the way you talk to me yesterday. I said, well, that's just too bad. You deserve that kind of talking to, and I expect you to change 100%, and there's not going to be any grace period or anything else, anything else. And I forget exactly what I said, after this many years. This was in the 80s, 1980s, not the 1880s. And so he says, well, if we hire in one of them, or something like, if you hire in, and I said, and there was an opening, of course, on that shift. And I said, well, Cleo, let me make it very clear to you, 100% clear, so there's no mistakes. I'm not going out and looking for a black person to hire for your shift. I'm going to hire the best person, regardless of color or anything else. I'm going to hire the best person. And then he's going to go, he's going to go to your shift. Now, let me make it clear, let me make it very clear to you, if he's black and he quits for any reason, if you have any kind of a problem with him, you better, when he hires in, you better show him the ropes, you better show him how to do everything, be a mentor to him, and you help him out and everything else. Well, they might, I forget exactly, Cleo, you don't understand. If for any reason he leaves employment with us, for any reason, you will be fired. If he decides to take a better job someplace else, you're fired. If he wins the lottery and he's a multi-millionaire and he decides he doesn't want to work and he quits, you're fired. And then I went through the whole thing with him. And It just so happens a black guy, and I was doing the hiring, even when the director of security was there, and even when the lieutenant was there, the lieutenant wasn't capable of. That's another story. Let me mention briefly that the director of security, everybody at the hospital called the manual, the lieutenant. I mean, when I'm talking about people, the department heads, the director of pharmacy, food service, nursing, all these people, they knew. I guess Mr. Ross had they'd seen him. That's why the guy undoubtedly had a heart attack. But to give you an example, I was in the office, the director of security's office for some reason, and Manuel called on the radio. Mr. Ross, the gate's not working on such and such a parking lot, so I'm going to flip the switch and leave the thing up. And then Mr. Ross went, "What's this? What's this? Oh, what's this?" And then he calls, to Manuel. "You're doing what?" And then Manuel could, came back on the radio. The gate's not working, so I'm flipping, which is what we did all the time, That was what we just did, except. And so then Mr. Ross says something to the effect, "Come to the office immediately." And then Manuel came up, sweating, and Mr. Ross says, like, "Why did you do that?" or whatever. But Manuel was, I thought he was going to, have a seizure. And then he said, "Manuel, I'm just, oh, it's okay, yeah, I have to, and then Manuel left. And that's one of the most cruel things I've ever seen somebody do. And especially as somebody who, at that point, I think Manuel had his first heart attack. So, but anyway, back to him. So a guy showed up who, a black guy, and his credentials were, excellent. And so I hired him. I didn't tell him anything. I didn't say, "Watch your back," or, I hired him in when he went to the second shift, and he outlasted me. I do want to mention, let me mention that several years later, I was working hospital security at another hospital, and I was divorced, of course, and I'd always claimed my children as dependents. That was when the wife wanted a divorce or whatever. I said, "Fine," and I said, "Now, I said, I'll pay for, I'll give you the car that was paid for, a nice car, better than I had, and the house, and, pay child support, of course, and how much are you thinking?" And she said, I said, "Okay." It wasn't, well, it was a lot. I mean, for me, child support, I guess, is always a lot. And I said, "And I'll claim the kids on the," she said, "That's fine, on the income tax." So I did that for years. And then she moved in with her, she sold the house, and she blames, a car plate, eventually she didn't put oil in the car and destroyed the engine on the car that she got. Anyway, she ended up moving in with her mother with the 4 kids. So when income tax time came around, I called and I said, "I want to check, make sure that Leela, her mother, if she's going to claim the kids as dependents." I said, "That's okay, and I understand it, because they're living there, and she's paying a house payment and she's buying food and all that kind of stuff. I said, I just want to make sure. And they asked her, no, no, no. And so I claimed the kids. I claimed the kids the next year, I think it was. And then I got audited. And it wasn't down at the federal building or whatever. They had, like, it was like sort of like a mall. They had, and it was a big place with pillars, sort of like, it was like a mall maybe. And they had these tables, and they had little screens up around, but my hearing is shot, but I could hear people talking. And every one of those tables had a man at it, and I could hear child support being mentioned. And so so when they came to me, they said, well, somebody claimed your children as dependents, and you claimed them. And I said, well, my ex-wife didn't work that year. I've always claimed the kids, as dependents. I said, I guess she did. Well, we can't tell you. And I said, you can't tell me? No, can't tell you who claimed it. And I said, well, she didn't work after that year. And I said, so for this year, before another, shows you how smart I am, Well, of course, I said, could you check and see if anybody claimed them for whatever the next year was? They came back and said, yeah, somebody claimed you. And I said, so it had to be my ex-mother-in-law. And they said, we can't tell you that. So it ended up, they said, okay, okay, Mr. Howard, you can just make the check out for $3,000 for the 2 years. And I said, I don't have $3,000, And I said, I'll have to make payments. So I took a job. I was still working hospital security, but I took a job at another hospital on my days off, three nights a week, midnight shift or whatever, for a year in order to get $3,000 in order to make those payments. I had a point, and okay. The hospital I went to work at, Menorah Hospital, a Jewish hospital. They were actually the security, except for one. One guy was a prick. He was to take my word for it. Well, my first day when I hired in, he was with me to, they said, take Jim and you're going to be working dispatch, have him there with you and show him everything. So it was a Sunday. I know it was a Sunday because he sat there at the desk reading the comics for, the normal thing would have been 2 hours working there. I'm not sure if he had to sit there any longer. But he sat there with just the comics from the Sunday paper and giggled and laughed and looked at him and did not say a fucking word to me. But I did, like I did say, okay, I knew what to ask, things, which, blah, blah, blah. I asked him and he would grudgingly, just answer me, not give me any information. But now everybody else was nice. When I would come in, the second shift supervisor was a black female. And she was nice, except just about every time I would come in, and she never worked with me. I mean, she was at second shift, I was coming in for the third shift. But she would make some type of a remark, in which I knew what, that was a few years ago, but, hey, I look like a racist, don't I? I mean, you could just put me holding a racist sign up or a Klan thing or something, and I'd just fit. You wouldn't think, I don't think that guy, But she'd just make some remark, and I can't, like I would say, how to make something up. I don't remember. Like I'd say, who am I working with tonight? You know, and she'd say something like, why, does that matter? Do you have an objection to working with certain people? You know? And I said, no, I just was wondering, you know. And then she would, just about it would be something like that, you know, she would just say something. And I never said, hey, if you're trying to imply or something that I'm racist, I'm not. And, you know, you know, I bet I fought racism more than you have, or anybody that I know, you know. I'd never say anything like that at all. I just, you know, ignored it. And so I've been working there, I don't know, you know, quite a while. And I came in to go to work, and she's there. And she gives me the look, or I'm not sure if she said something then or not. And then the security officer, I guess the reason I never saw him, or I guess he must have worked a second shift. But anyway, he came into the office, and it was that guy the black security officer that I hired in at Trinity Lutheran Hospital for that second shift. And he said, oh my God, Jim, I didn't know you worked here. And I said, I just pay attention to my schedule. I said, I didn't know you worked here, you know? And he said, yeah. And then she says, you know, the black second shift supervisor, she says, whatever his name was, you know, can't remember. She says, oh, you know Jim? And he says, yeah, I know Jim. He's the guy that I told you about. I've been telling you about, you know, that I worked with, and he's blah, 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 you know, like, and she goes like, oh, wow, you know. She didn't say, I'm sorry or anything, but she got educated, you know, because he had told her, I guess. Now, see, I didn't tell him anything. I just dealt with what needed to be done, you know. So, by the way, when I hired that guy, of course, when I hired him in at Trinity, for like a week I had him work the day shift, just so I could, you know, tell him some stuff, some stuff, and that type of stuff, and then have him go over on the second shift or whatever. But anyway, so he was there, and he was a big guy, by the way. So we got a call, or I got a call, you know, unruly patient. That's the guy. I don't think that time he tried to jump out the window, but we got a call on him. He was hanging out the window. We had to pull him back in the window. He was not on the ground floor, by the way. And so anyway, I showed up, you know. You know, he may have been in the patrol car or something. So, and I didn't even think if he'd be coming, or you know, I just showed up, and this guy's you know, acting up, and so I'm talking to this guy, and I was sort of standing in the doorway, inside the doorway, you know, and talking to the patient that was in the bed. And I think a shadow sort of fell on this guy. I thought maybe just I didn't even think about it, you know. I'd have thought maybe somebody walked by the door there, you know, from the hallway. Somebody, you know, nursing or somebody going down. But a shadow sort of fell on the guy. And the guy goes, well, officer, I forget exactly what, you know, like, officer, I'm sorry. I have been misbehaving myself, and I'm going to do, you know, whatever. And then I sort of, I'm sure I was thinking, okay, Jim, you are really, you know, you're persuasive. You know how to handle these kind of, I probably might have had something like that, you know, going through my mind. And so I said, okay, hope everything's okay. I forget what I said, you know, you know, and then I turned around, and standing in the doorway was this officer that the black officer that I just hired in. The reason the shadow fell on this guy is he was that big. And So, London police officer pleads guilty to kidnap and rape of Sarah Everhard, I guess. Wow. I don't know who that is. I haven't heard that story. I didn't intend, I never intend. I should have an outline of what I want to talk about. This is sort of a test. This is a test of what was it? Yeah, listening to shortwave radio for years and years. When I was a kid, but it continued past that until I got married. Got married at age 26. Of course, my shortwave listening had gone down, but I still listened to BBC World Service News and other thing on the shortwave radio. But when I got married, do you have to listen to that noise, that static, or whatever? So I basically went just about to zero shortwave listening after that. From the time I was 13 or 14 until I was 26. Also, from that age, I had two pen pals. One was a boy my age in Japan, and the other was a girl my age in Spain. And my wife at that time just, indicated she didn't like me paying attention to somebody else. Maybe the main one was a girl. There wasn't anything, Well, it is 6 a.m. That's probably a good time to quit. And it's a video that is 47 minutes. And I think the audio is good, and I think the video is good. What is this? Let's see. Don't ruffle my fur. I will put you in the trunk and help people look for you. My daughter Hillary got that for me. I've seen some, do I have one? I've seen some cute t-shirts. Well, I saw one on YouTube here someplace somebody was wearing, I think. And can't remember now what it says. I guess I shouldn't, It was about the virus, Wow, the news just, can it get any worse? Senate reveals new details about the January 6th Capitol attack. I feel sorry for those Capitol police officers who worked there. It looks like, management and supervision let them down big time in every way. There was, and just having to deal with, there's the one recent, the recent case after the insurrection and treason there at the on January 6th. There's the members of Congress who, there's a member of Congress, Republican, who refused to go through the metal detector that they put up in order to make sure nobody goes into the Senate or House, I think it was the House chambers, who is armed. And the person went around the thing, and security, the Capitol Police, and he just, brushed by them or whatever. There's a female congressperson who did the same thing at another entrance into the House chambers. there's just so many things that happen that should not happen. I I've mentioned that before, that back a few years ago, I've got my daughter and son-in-law are vegans, and they live in the Washington D.C. area and work in the Washington D.C. area, and I went there. So that was the first time I've been in the northeast part of the United States. There's some videos there of it, by the way. In fact, I think there's a playlist. And anyway, that was the first time. It was the first time for being in Washington D.C., and that was really something. I was there for 2 weeks. But before I went there, my legs and my feet were, take my word for it, gross. And I was there for 2 weeks, and my had been that way for years. And I ate the vegan stuff, and did walk every other day. We went for like 3.5 hours. It just worked out that way. We didn't say we're going to do it for 3.5 hours, but every other day, they knew I needed some rest in between, and so walked. Okay, I was there for 2 weeks. I lost weight. I was eating the vegan food, which I'm not a vegan person, you know, at all. Well, look at me, you know. And my feet went back to normal looking, and my legs back to normal looking. And, you know, then I came back, and I forget how long it took. Not very long. I was back to swollen, gross, you know, legs and feet. You may have an idea if you know somebody who is, you know, diabetic, and if they still have both their legs, or maybe they have one of their legs, or maybe they have both of their legs. Anyway, I said I was going to end this, so do a thumbs up if you can. Use one of the links below that'll take you to Amazon, and if you purchase something, I'll get a small commission. So thank you very much for watching.